Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's a pretty fun one. We're going to go through the Composable resources tutorial. So basically, NFTs, owning other NFTs. And this is a really cool part of the Flow blockchain. I really love this. The use case that I have in mind for this right away is in the hockey game that I'm building. The players will be able to own gear. So similar to any other like role-playing game where you have a set of armor, weapons, potions, you name it. This just creates kind of the ability for your NFT to have an inventory, and then allow those pieces of the inventory or those NFTs belonging to it to kind of have an impact over your NFT's abilities in if it's a game that you're playing, or the overall game itself. So it's really cool, really fun, and this is going to be another really quick tutorial just to kind of show you the basics of it. So we're going to have one smart contract. The contract is going to create it's basically like a really simple CryptoKitties NFT. Very simple. So it's going to create a kitty NFT as well as a kitty hat resource. And one thing that I'm going to point out here, because I think it's super cool, this tutorial was around before the Dr. Seuss news dropped from Flow. So recently, I mean not in crypto time, but within the last couple of months, Flow released, or Dapper released the news that the Dr. Seuss is going to be releasing NFTs on the Flow blockchain. So that's just a cool piece of news. A lot of people are really excited for Dr. Seuss collectibles to come out on the blockchain. And so I never realized that this tutorial was actually a little bit of foreshadowing. I don't know if it was intentional or not, but I think it's super cool to actually hear that news coming out after doing this tutorial, considering we're dealing with kitty hats and the obvious connection to cat on the hat, or cat in the hat. So if that was intentional, shout out, because that's a sweet little Easter egg. Anyways, so let's get started running through the contract quickly. Like I said, we're just going to have one simple smart contract and then 2 transactions to run. So it's going to be a really quick stream today. If we do get any viewers in the channel, please do drop some questions in the chat. And if you don't make the live stream, please do drop your questions in the comments and we'll get back and have a good chat about them. It'll be amazing. I'd love to get some two-way conversation going around these smart contracts. So anyways, just getting started, we're going to declare public contract Kittyverse. The Kittyverse is going to be the contract that contains our kitty hats as well as our kitty NFTs. So our first resource that we're going to declare is a public resource for kitty hat. We're going to have 2 fields, so both of them will be public, both of them will be constants. We're going to have an ID, which will be an integer, and we're going to have a name, which will be a string. When we initialize, we'll pass in the ID and the name, and we'll set that right away. The kitty hat will also have a public method on it called tipHat, which returns a string. And in this case, it's really just simply set up where if the current hat is the cowboy hat, we're going to have a very relevant howdy y'all greeting message returned. And if it's the top hat, we're going to have a greetings fellow aristocrats message returned. So just a couple fun little messages relevant to the hats that they're wearing. And if there's no hat, we're just going to return hello. Well, I guess that's wrong. If it's not a cowboy hat or a top hat, we're going to return hello. And then we'll have just a public function for creating a new hat, where we give it our ID and our string. Our name, and then after that we're going to create a kitty resource. So again, it's going to have a public constant for an ID, and it's also going to have a public constant items, which is a resource dictionary, and that's what's going to store the actual kitty hat NFTs. So when we initialize this, we're just going to pass in our new ID and create an empty resource dictionary for our items. And then our destroy method, we're just going to destroy the items dictionary. So again, just to touch on that, these are just quick and dirty destroy methods. For anything in production, you're going to want to do something with the NFTs in that dictionary before destroying them. Otherwise, you're probably going to just end up deleting something with real value. And then finally, we're just gonna have a public method for creating a kitty, and this will return a new CryptoKitty or a new kitty resource. And in this case, we're just setting the ID to 1 because we're just using this contract for a simple demonstration. So that's it for the contract. Pretty simple. We're going to deploy that. And so one thing to note, the other demos that we've done, in some cases when we initialize the contract, we handle some creation, deployment, and storage. This is just deploying the contract. We're going to handle creating the kitty hats, storing them, creating capabilities and references, all that stuff in the first transaction here. So looking at transaction 1, this transaction creates a new kitty, creates 2 new hats, puts the hats on the cat, and then stores the kitty in account storage. So a couple cool things to point out here. Let's run through the transaction. So in our prepare block, which is the only block that we're going to need for this transaction, we are going to take our account. So this is our signer's account object. We're going to create the first kitty object. So let kitty, we're going to run the create kitty method. That's going to return a new kitty. That's a resource. So we're using our move operator, and we're going to store it in that constant. Next, we're going to create our 2 kitty hats. So for hat 1, we're going to create the hat, give it an ID of 1, and this will be our cowboy hat. And for hat 2, we're going to create a hat, give it an ID of 2, and that'll be our top hat. And again, these hats are both resources, so we're going to use the move operator here to store them correctly. So now, once the hats have been created, we're going to actually add that cat or the hats to the cats. That's going to trip me up so bad. Okay, so we're going to create a constant here for the old cowboy hat, and remember this should be familiar now. Because we're using resources, items is a resource dictionary. So when we add an item to a resource dictionary, we're going to add it to the dictionary and remove any resource that was potentially there, and then deliberately destroy that resource. So what that does is if there was a resource already at this index or at this key in the items dictionary, it'll move that old resource out and destroy that. In this case, there wasn't one there. That would be a nil value. But this is just for the sake of handling resources. We need to do this, and we need to be explicit about what we're doing so that we know what risks we're possibly taking with destroying our resources. So again, we do the same thing here for hat 2. We store it in the top hat key, and then we remove if there was any old resource there, and then destroy the old resource that was at that key. We'll log out the cat has the hats to let us know that we successfully created our cat and our hats and added them. And then after we're done that, we're going to store our kitty to the storage path, or to the kitty path at the storage domain. So that'll be living in the signer's account. And the cool thing to note here, and this is kind of the meat of the whole subject, is the fact that the kitty resource is the only resource that's actually being stored in this storage domain. So these hats don't technically go they don't go directly into account storage like we've been doing with NFTs that belong to an account. These actually go right inside that kitty resource into the items dictionary and are then owned by that resource itself. So once those are living in the kitty, so we only need to store the kitty in the account storage area. Pretty cool stuff. So we're gonna run this with account 1. The cat has the hats, and when we check account 1, we'll see our kitty's ID, as well as the hats in our items dictionary. So pretty cool stuff. Okay, so on to transaction number 2. So this one moves the kitty out of storage, takes the cowboy hat off of the kitty, calls its tip hat function. So that's going to return that greeting message depending on what type of hat the kitty's wearing. And it's going to move the kitty back into storage after it's all done. So same idea here. We grab our signer's account object. From our signer's account, we're going to load the actual kitty resource from the storage domain at the kitty path. Otherwise, we're going to panic, shut the whole transaction down, and we'll log out this message. Once we've pulled our kitty out of storage, we're going to take the cowboy hat off the kitty. So we are going to remove the cowboy hat, remove the resource at the cowboy hat key from the items dictionary. And if it's not there, we're going to panic, shut the transaction down, and log out that the cowboy hat doesn't exist. And then we are going to run the tip hat method on the cowboy hat and then destroy it. So that should say howdy y'all, if I remember correctly. Yep. And then we're going to tip the top hat that is actually still on the kitty. So from the actual items array at the top hat index, or at the top hat key, if there is a resource there, we're going to call the tip hat method. And then once we're done with that, we're just going to move this kitty back into storage, right into the same domain and path in the account storage. So we've pulled the kitty out of storage, we pulled the hat off the kitty, we've called the tip hat method on the cowboy hat, and that'll return howdy y'all. Destroy the cowboy hat, and then just from the actual items dictionary on the kitty resource, we're going to call the tip hat method, of course, if the resource exists, which it did, and we return the right method. So that's awesome. Let me just see. I think what we're gonna do, just because like that was it, and it's so short that I want to create just another hat, and I mean really not gonna demonstrate anything other than. Is that how you spell sombrero? Yep, cool. Winning the spelling test. So we'll give that an ID of 3. So our cat would have 3 hats. No, I'm not going to say anything Spanish. I'm just going to say hello. But we don't really use that other, like the default hello greeting there, so just for the sake of demonstrating and changing something, we're gonna add our sombrero, and then we're gonna interact with it over here. We'll just do this. Similar ID. There's similar idea here. We'll just check if there's a sombrero. Normally I would comment that, but this is just for the sake of the demo, so I'm not going to. So I'm just going to redeploy. I think this is going to clear, yeah, it'll clear the state of all the accounts. So when I run these transactions again, we shouldn't be duplicating any of the resources that we already have. Good. So when I run this, we should get our hello message. Uh-oh. What happened there? Why? Just check the account storage after I redeploy. Okay. Cat has the hatch. That was a cowboy hat. That was a top hat and has a sombrero. It's a good beat, so I don't know. Okay, let's see. There we go, cool. So it's just a state issue. Sometimes I do find that you need to run like a clear state twice. So redeploy the contract and it'll actually redeploy the second time. I think we ran into that in an earlier video actually. So I think that's what caught me there, was I thought that it had actually cleared the state, but there was still some old state in there from the first run through that we did. So really the only difference there was that we just added that sombrero, and because that sombrero doesn't have like a custom condition in here where it has its own greeting message, it's just returning the basic hello message. So any hat that we add that's not a cowboy hat or a top hat would return hello. And that's as deep as I really want to go for a basic tutorial on this, because it's really important to kind of get those core concepts down. So again, like, be really comfortable with NFTs and resources, be extremely comfortable with how to create a resource dictionary and then how those resources are managed within that dictionary, which is trickier than it sounds, I think. But it's yeah, this is really cool. Like, this is gonna be an area that we spend a lot of time on, both building NFTs and kind of the relationship between NFTs. Some of the further streams are going to be a lot more focused on game development. So we're going to be using these NFTs as game assets, and gear, and you name it, wherever we can. I'd love to get into building some land too. That would be really fun. So yeah, the next tutorial we're going to do after this one is the last one for the playground, and that's going to be voting. And then at the end of next week, we should start being able to kind of branch out. I'd like to go back over the marketplace a little bit from Tuesday this week. I feel like I didn't really do it justice. I blasted through it and just didn't really have enough time that day to really comb over and discuss what we were doing. But I think I kind of glazed over some important parts of that, and would love to kind of go back into the marketplace a little bit and kind of start playing around with it and customizing that tutorial code a bit. So we might spend some time there at the end of the week next week. But then after that, we're going to start getting into more of a creative space. So bring some project ideas, bring some questions. This is when kind of the camera almost gets turned around to you, and I start taking some interest in what you're developing, because that's really a big part of why I'm doing this. Is I want to help people make the transition from wherever they're coming from to blockchain game development, and I'm really excited to see what people are building. So that'll be all for today. We'll be back on Tuesday with the voting tutorial, and until then, please do take a run through this. Do it, like, go through some of these last tutorials yourself, and post some questions and comments, because I'd love to help out. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.